Hello and welcome to HealthyHouseplants.com, where we teach you all about gardening in the great indoors. If you'd like to support our show, please use our Amazon affiliate link below. Today I'm going to talk to you about why does your plant have brown leaf tips and some solutions for those brown leaf tips. This is your Dracaena here, and it does have some brown leaf tips on it. I was not happy to see the brown leaf tips, but happy to find a plant in my collection that did have some brown leaf tips so I could show them to you. So we'll get up a little closer here and you can get a good view here. So you'll see that there are brown leaf tips in various areas on this plant. And one of the reasons that it does have brown leaf tips is because it needs to be repotted. This plant is growing out of, its roots are growing out of the drainage holes. It's still very healthy, but it does need to be repotted. So that is one reason your plant needs to be repotted. Transplanting into fresh soil is really important because because what happens in the soil is from fertilizing and even watering is salts build up in the soil, and those salts will break down the roots of the plant, and also the plant will try to, so that doesn't happen, will try to push the salts out of the end of its leaves, but it only makes it to the tips. So that's a sign that can be a sign of salt in the soil, which means you need to repot the plant. And so that is one of the reasons. Dracaenas also, certain plants are much more susceptible. Dracaenas, plants with long strappy foliage like the Dracaenas, are more susceptible to leaf tip burn than some other plants. But all plants can get it because of these various reasons. And I do have various videos on how to deal with the brown leaf tips and repotting, etc. I will be putting links below for any videos I mentioned in this video, as well as any related videos. Okay, so we covered one reason. Another reason is uneven watering. Some houseplants are really sensitive to periods of being droughted, and then when you forget to water about them, and then you say, oh my gosh, and you water them really well, and then maybe you forget again, and then you water again, and you forget again, and you water again, etc. So that uneven, chaotic kind of a schedule going on, it often will happen with plants like Dracaena, because the thing is, unlike something like a maidenhair fern where you drought it and forget it, the plant is very damaged and or won't make it, a lot of house plants are pretty forgiving when you forget to water them. They will continue to live, but they will have some things that occur, and one of them is brown leaf tips when you forget to water. So droughting a plant. So try to keep on a regular schedule. Now by regular schedule, I'm not talking about every Tuesday I water my plants no matter what. That you don't want to do because that will quickly lead to root rot. But you do want to water the plant consistently when it needs watering. So when Dracaenas get to 4, approaching 3 on the moisture meter, when you use the moisture meter, then it's time to rewater. So try not to let them go into 1 or 2 and then you water and then etc. That uneven watering. Okay, so another thing is sensitivity to certain substances in the water, such as chlorine, fluoride. I already mentioned the salts in the water as well. Those will cause leaf tip burn. These substances are also toxic to the houseplants over time. The houseplants absorb them, then they try to, as I mentioned, push them out of the leaves, and that causes the leaf tip burn. I do have videos on what to do when you have chlorine problems, fluoride problems, etc., high mineral content in your water, and I will link all of that as well. Okay, so solution to that, you can get chlorine to dissipate if you let the water sit for 24 hours before watering the plant. Fluorides and salts do need to be filtered out of the water, so for especially sensitive plants, you want to use distilled water or reverse osmosis water, or buy like one of those filters that you can put water into, the handheld filters. Those also work. Avoid always using softened water on your houseplants. I do have a video on how bad that is for plants. It's very high in salt and it will really damage your plants. And you'll have tons of brown leaf tips as well as brown edging and all kinds of issues and yellowing foliage, etc. Okay, another cause of brown leaf tips is overfeeding. Fertilizers do have salts in them, as I mentioned. Those salts do build up in the soil. The plants will try to push them out of the leaves, causing the brown leaf tips. They are especially a problem in chemical fertilizers. That's why I always suggest using organics, which are much lower in salts. However, even organics over time will build up those salts. So as mentioned before, that's why you do need to repot as well. Okay, so for the overfeeding, you want to, obviously the solution, fertilize correctly and with an organic fertilizer rather than a chemical one, as I mentioned. And also, say you over-fertilize, or say you just fertilize with a bunch of chemical fertilizer, and you're thinking, okay, now what do I do? There's a really good quick fix, and that is to leach the soil of the plant, of the house plant. I do a video on how to do that. What you want to do is you want to let warm water rush through the pot. You want to add at least 3 of these worth, this size here, the pot to be here when I repot for this plant, worth of water or even more. That will rinse out salts that have built up, that have accumulated in the soil, and that will really help the plant. And then when you get a chance, do repot, because that's even better in the fresh soil. Okay, so another reason, overly dry air. So low humidity. Generally speaking, that's 40% humidity and lower. That will also cause leaf tip burn on a lot of plants. This is especially a problem in heated homes during the cold months of the year because it dries out the air around the plants. So the solution is to increase humidity as much as possible. Do your best to get it to 50% humidity. You can use a hygrometer. I have a video on that. I'll put a link below for hygrometers as well. And you can use that hygrometer to determine what your humidity is, and then when you work on the humidity, you can see if you've raised it. So different ways to raise humidity level for your houseplants. I have a whole humidity playlist, link, but those various ways, grouping them together. Plants transpire. When they transpire, they release water vapor into the air. When they release water vapor into the air, not only do they vaporize the air and humidify the air for us, they humidify the air for each other. So the more plants you can have, the better. So that is a really good reason. People ask you why you have so many houseplants. You can explain, because they're humidifying each other and it's good for them and it raises the humidity level. You can also use pebble trays, humidity trays. You can also mist them. And if you have really dry air, humidifiers also, and I have videos on all of those. Another thing to keep in mind too is to keep them away from forced air, heating and air conditioning ducts. That air will also dry out the air around them. Okay, another reason, and actually the last reason here, incorrect pH. Many houseplants like an acidic soil. That is a pH of 6.4 to 6.8. Some areas of the country, such as the West, I live in California, have alkaline water. So what happens over time as you're watering is the soil becomes much more alkaline, and it is no longer has that acidic soil in there. So that's when you can run into these brown leaf tips as well. You want to test your soil. I have a playlist on how to test the pH of your soil, and it shows you a plant that was revived and that was having a pH problem and now is doing really well. So that's what you want to do if you suspect this could be the problem. And this is often, the pH is often the thing that you want to look at if you've gone through all the other things. You've repotted recently, you're using the right kind of water, etc. It's not too dry, all that sort of thing. One other thing about watering, you always want to water with warm water. Never use cold water on your plants. That can also harm the foliage. Okay, So once you've determined the pH, you can alter the pH in the soil, and or you can transplant into fresh soil, which is, as mentioned, a really good idea, and that will solve your pH problem. So there's different ways to deal with that. If it is a plant in a big pot, you're not ready to repot, then you do want to test the pH and do what you can to alter the pH so that it becomes more acidic for the plant. It's also okay to cut burned leaf tip, the brown leaf tips off the plant, off the tip. I do have videos on how to do that as well. You want to use sharp scissors to cut and reshape the houseplant leaves, so that'll make them look better. So there you go for why does your plant have brown leaf tips and the solutions for getting those brown leaf tips to stop happening in your indoor garden. Thank you for stopping by today. Please leave any comments about any indoor gardening tutorials you'd like to see. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. And please check the bell if you'd like to be notified when new videos are released.